Hey everyone! We are working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content and it is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button right now as we proceed. Subscribe to this channel right now because the story we are breaking down today starts at a trophy ceremony, moves through a pattern of institutional failure that multiple tennis legends have now publicly identified, and ends somewhere that every person who has been watching Eala's journey with genuine investment needs to hear. Jessica Pegula just won the Dubai Open. A genuine, prestigious, high-quality WTA title on a surface that rewards real tennis played at a real level against real competition. She stood at that podium with cameras everywhere and the spotlight entirely on her, and she made a deliberate, intentional, measured choice about what she was going to use that moment for. She did not talk exclusively about herself. She turned the conversation toward Eala and the treatment this young Filipino player has been receiving from the organization that is supposed to be elevating her. And when Jessica Pegula, who is not a firebrand, who does not show up to press conferences looking to blow the roof off anything, who picks her spots with the careful deliberateness of someone who understands the weight of words spoken from a winner's platform, decides that this is worth saying out loud, in public, on the record, at a trophy ceremony, people should probably pay very close attention. Let us set the full context of what Pegula was describing, because the specific details of her experience matter enormously for understanding why her decision to speak up carries the weight it does. She was talking about her match against Eala at the Miami Open. Pegula is from Miami. She grew up there. The crowd in South Florida is typically on her side when she walks onto that court, a home court advantage that professional athletes value and acknowledge and factor into their mental preparation for matches. She walked into that match expecting the room to be with her in the way that home crowds are with their local favorite. What she encountered instead stopped her completely. The venue was packed with people she had never seen at a tennis match in her life. Families, groups of friends, people in Filipino colors, people who had not come to watch tennis generally. They had come specifically and solely to watch this one player compete. The scale of support that Eala had drawn to a tennis venue in South Florida was so far beyond what Pegula had expected that her immediate reaction, by her own description, was genuine bewilderment. She said the whole crowd was against her and she was standing there thinking, where did these people come from? And she said it with delighted amazement, not complaint. She was marveling at something she recognized as genuinely rare. A player who had built the kind of authentic, massive, passionate audience that most professional athletes spend entire careers chasing and never find. The crowd Eala drew in Miami was not manufactured. Nobody paid for it. It arrived because people felt something real about this player and responded to that feeling by showing up in numbers that changed the entire atmosphere of a professional tennis match in a city where Pegula herself was the home favorite. Then Pegula connected that Miami experience to what happened at the Australian Open, and this is where her comments shifted from observational wonder to pointed criticism that the WTA is going to have a very difficult time explaining away. The 2025 Australian Open produced some of its best crowd numbers in history, record-breaking attendance figures of the kind that tournament directors and broadcasters cite as evidence of the sport's growth and the event's continued relevance. A significant portion of that record crowd came specifically because Eala was in the draw. Fans flew from the Philippines. They traveled from across Southeast Asia. They booked flights and hotels and ground transport. They arrived at Melbourne Park ready to be part of a historic moment for their country and their player, and they found themselves standing outside, not inside the venue watching the match. Standing in queues that were not moving fast enough, wrapped around the stadium, trying to get through doors that were already at capacity, because the WTA had scheduled Eala on a court that simply could not contain the crowd she was drawing. Pegula confirmed this directly. She said people were wrapped around the stadium just trying to get in. Fans who had spent real money and real time and real effort to be there for their moment ended up outside, watching on their phones or missing the match entirely, and then Eala lost. And those fans who had traveled across the Pacific had nothing to show for the sacrifice they had made to be present. Pegula called it what it was: disrespect. Disrespect toward Eala and disrespect toward the fans who deserved better than to be turned away at the door of an event their presence was actively making historic. The scheduling complexity argument that the WTA and its defenders inevitably raise when this pattern gets discussed deserves honest engagement rather than dismissal, because there is genuine logistical truth in the observation that Grand Slam scheduling involves multiple courts, broadcast commitments, sponsor obligations, and weather considerations that make simple solutions less simple than they appear from the outside. Acknowledged. And then consider this: this is not the first tournament. It is not the second. It is not a one-off scheduling quirk that occurred because of unusual circumstances that nobody could have anticipated. It is a pattern, repeated across multiple events, multiple countries, multiple organizational decision-making processes, with the same outcome every time. Eala gets a small court, the crowd she draws cannot fit, and fans who came specifically for her are turned away. When a pattern repeats across enough data points, the complexity argument stops providing cover. The pattern becomes the story. And the pattern has now been identified publicly by people whose credibility cannot be dismissed with the standard responses that organizations use when fan communities raise concerns. Novak Djokovic, 24 Grand Slam titles, the most decorated singles player in the history of the sport, a man who has witnessed every dimension of tennis politics and scheduling dynamics across a career spanning more than 2 decades, looked at Eala's situation and said what needed to be said. He called her the greatest tennis player the Philippines has ever produced. He said she deserves all the respect in the world. He acknowledged directly that the scheduling and court assignment decisions around her matches had contributed to difficult competitive conditions. He said her country is a big country with big interest and that it deserves to be treated accordingly. When Djokovic says something like this, the conversation moves out of fan frustration territory into a different and more serious register. He has nothing to gain from saying it. He has no commercial relationship with Eala's brand that would motivate the advocacy. He observed the situation honestly and called it what it was, and the credibility he brings to that assessment is not something the WTA can simply absorb and ignore without consequence. There was also the incident during one of Eala's matches, the moment when an official approached her about items in her bag at a pivotal point in the game when her momentum was building in a significant direction, that added another layer to the already uncomfortable pattern being discussed. The timing of that intervention was noticed by players, by commentators, by the broader tennis community watching the match unfold. Nobody with intellectual honesty can say with certainty what was in that official's mind. But the specific moment at which it occurred, the effect it had on Eala's rhythm at exactly the wrong time, and the pattern it sits within when placed alongside the court assignments and the turned-away crowds and the repeated organizational failures to give this player the stage her audience demands, none of it feels like coincidence to the people watching closely. Stories have a way of assembling themselves from accumulated data points, and the story assembling around how the WTA has managed Eala is not a comfortable one for the institution. Here is what makes all of this ultimately inspiring rather than purely frustrating. Eala is 20 years old. Novak Djokovic is talking about her. A Dubai Open champion used her winner's speech to advocate for her. People are flying across the Pacific Ocean to watch her play tennis on small courts that cannot hold the crowd she generates. Every obstacle placed in front of her has produced the same result. She keeps winning, she keeps growing, she keeps building, she keeps giving her people reasons to believe. The small courts have not diminished her. The questionable scheduling has not broken her. The pattern of institutional undervaluation has not touched the trajectory of a player who went from ranked 147th in the world to world number 31 in 12 months while beating multiple top 10 players along the way. She has handled every adverse circumstance with a composure that's genuinely unusual for someone her age, and the support gathering around her from the sport's most respected voices is not the support that gets extended to merely promising players. It is the support that gets extended to players who represent something that people feel strongly about protecting. The WTA has an opportunity that most sporting institutions would pay significant sums to manufacture artificially: an organic, passionate, globally significant fan base in a region they have been trying to penetrate for years, delivered by a 20-year-old phenomenon who built it through talent and heart and the specific authentic connection with her community that no marketing campaign has ever successfully replicated. The solution is not complicated. Put her on courts that can hold the crowds she draws. Look at the ticket demand data. Look at the social media traffic. Look at where the people are trying to go and schedule accordingly. That is the job. Pegula said it. Djokovic said it. The fans standing outside Melbourne Park said it with their presence. The only question remaining is whether the WTA is listening. Drop your most passionate thoughts in the comments right now. Do you think Pegula using her Dubai Trophy ceremony to advocate for Eala is one of the most meaningful moments in women's tennis this year? Does Djokovic's intervention change how seriously the WTA has to take this criticism? And what does the right version of how Eala gets treated at Indian Wells and Miami look like? Get everything into the comments immediately. Smash that like button to push this conversation to every corner of the tennis world. Subscribe to this channel for coverage that goes beyond the surface of what is happening in women's tennis right now, and share this video because this story deserves every audience it can find. The WTA has an opportunity. The question is whether they take it. Laban